The moon hung heavy over the kingdom, its pale glow casting long shadows across the marble halls of the palace. It had witnessed countless coronations, whispered secrets, and stolen kisses beneath its watchful eye. But tonight the moon did not shine in triumph. Tonight it wept. Beneath its sorrowful light, a love once strong enough to unite a kingdom now teetered on the edge of ruin. A king, bound by honor and love, stood betrayed. A queen, adorned in jewels but shackled by ambition, had chosen power over the heart that once beat for her. The court of Altheron was no place for sentiment. It was a battlefield where deception was the sharpest weapon and love the most dangerous weakness. Somewhere within the palace walls, an encrypted letter had slipped into the wrong hands. A plot to unseat the king had begun to unravel, revealing treachery buried deeper than anyone had imagined. Loyalties crumbled like dust, and in the flickering torchlight of the grand corridors, whispers of war slithered through the air. Kalin, the warrior who once fought for justice, now fought for vengeance. His love had turned into an obsession, his heart into a blade aimed at the man who had stolen everything from him. The queen's crown gleamed, but its weight grew unbearable. The throne she had secured felt colder than the steel of the daggers hidden behind every smile in the court. She had risen, but at what cost? As the kingdom fractured, the moon, once a silent witness to their love, now bore witness to their undoing. And as the winds howled through the palace towers, one question remained. Who would survive the night? In the beginning, their love was a force that defied the weight of the crown. King Edric, a ruler bound by duty, and Queen Seraphina, a woman of both beauty and cunning, were once two souls entwined by fate. Their love was whispered through the marble halls of the palace, spoken of in songs sung by the common folk. Together, they stood as a beacon of hope, a union that promised stability in a kingdom threatened by unrest. But love alone was never enough in the court of Altheron. Power lurked behind every vow, ambition hid within every embrace. Seraphina, though devoted, saw the throne as more than just a seat of honor. It was a battlefield, one where the weak perished and only the ruthless survived. She learned the language of deception, mastering the art of control with a smile that concealed daggers. Edric, though a warrior at heart, was blind to the dangers that lurked within his own court. He believed love could tame the storm brewing around him, unaware that even love had its price. As their influence grew, so did the enemies who watched from the shadows. The nobles, restless and hungry for power, whispered of a new ruler, one who could break the chain of bloodline rule. It was in this moment, when love and power became one, that the seeds of betrayal were sown. Edric and Seraphina had built an empire together, but in a kingdom where loyalty was fleeting and ambition unrelenting, love was not a shield, it was a weapon. And soon they would learn that even the greatest love stories could crumble beneath the weight of a crown. Love, once their greatest strength, had become a fracture too deep to mend. The whispers of the court had turned into roars, and the weight of the crown had twisted what was once pure into something unrecognizable. King Edric, betrayed not by an enemy but by the woman who once swore her heart to him, stood amidst the ruins of his trust. Queen Seraphina, adorned in the spoils of power, had made her choice, a choice that severed the last thread binding them together. It was not a single moment that shattered them, but a series of quiet betrayals. The stolen glances between Seraphina and Alaric, the ambitious noble who sought more than just her hand. The encrypted letters passed between flickering candlelight, their contents steeped in treason. The creeping realization that her love had been replaced by something colder, something unyielding. Edric had once believed their love was stronger than the scheming of the court. He had been a fool. Kalin, the man who had once sworn to protect both king and queen, now found himself caught between loyalty and a growing hunger for retribution. He had loved Seraphina in silence, but love in the court of Altheron was not a bond. It was a chain, one that could be broken at any moment. And when Seraphina accepted Alaric's proposal, when she stood beside another man with a crown heavy upon her head, Kaelin felt something inside him die. The kingdom did not mourn the breaking of their love, but the moon did. It shone upon the cold marble floors where vows had once been whispered, now replaced by the echoes of betrayal. And in that moment, as Edric's heart hardened and Kaelin's rage took root, the world shifted. The bond that once held them together was no more. Betrayal had set the wheels of fate in motion, but it was vengeance that turned them. The kingdom of Altheron, once held together by love and unity, now lay divided in shadow. King Edric, stripped of the warmth that once guided him, no longer ruled with mercy, only with purpose. Every deception, every whispered scheme that had conspired against him fueled the fire in his veins. He had trusted too deeply, loved too fiercely, and for that he had been undone. But no more. Kaelin, the man who had once fought for justice, now fought for something far darker. The pain of Seraphina's betrayal twisted inside him like a blade, turning his once noble heart into a vessel of wrath. Alaric had stolen her, taken everything from him. If love had failed to bind them, then destruction would. Kaelin would not merely defeat Alaric, he would erase him. The kingdom that had turned its back on loyalty would drown in the consequences of its own treachery. Seraphina, who had once believed she was shaping her own destiny, now stood at the peak of power, only to realize the cost. The throne she had secured came with chains she had not foreseen. Alaric was no savior. He was a storm, ruthless and unrelenting. The love she had sacrificed everything for was no longer love at all, but a cold, calculated arrangement. And as she watched the kingdom unravel, as Edric and Kaelin's descent into darkness consumed all in their path, she understood. Her choices had not only doomed them all, but had set a fire that could never be extinguished. The moon, once a witness to whispered vows, now bore silent witness to a kingdom descending into chaos. The game was no longer about power or love. It was about survival. The night was colder than ever before. The kingdom of Altheron, once a realm of grandeur and promise, now lay in ruins beneath a sky heavy with sorrow. The moon, which had once shone upon stolen kisses and whispered vows, now illuminated the wreckage of a love story that had become a tragedy. It did not judge. It did not interfere. It only wept. King Edric stood at the edge of his throne room, his hands stained with the weight of his choices. Vengeance had consumed him, turning his once noble reign into a reign of fire and steel. The banners that once flew high in unity were now drenched in the blood of those who had betrayed him. But had he won, or had he merely become another tyrant forged by loss? Kaelin, the warrior who had once fought for honor, had become something else entirely. His love for Seraphina had withered, replaced by a fury that could not be undone. He had sought to destroy Alaric, and he had succeeded. But at what cost? The man staring back at him from the reflection of his blade was not the man he had once been. He had chased vengeance into the abyss, only to find himself trapped there. Seraphina, who had played the game of power so masterfully, now found herself standing amidst the ruins of her own making. She had chosen ambition over love, control over trust, and now she had nothing. Alaric was dead, the throne was crumbling, and the love she had once forsaken was beyond saving. She lifted her gaze to the moon, its glow reflecting the tears she refused to shed. Had she won? Or had she lost everything? The moon had witnessed their rise, their love, their betrayals. Now, it stood as the only thing left untouched by the war that had shattered them. And as the winds howled through the ruined palace, It wept for the king and queen who had once believed they could defy fate. The fires of war had burned out. The echoes of betrayal had faded into silence. The throne of Altheron, once a symbol of power, stood empty, its seat colder than the bodies left behind in its name. Edric, Kaelin, and Seraphina, three souls bound by love, torn apart by ambition, had played their final move, leaving only ruins behind. The kingdom they sought to control no longer belonged to them. Time would forget their names, but the moon would remember. It had watched them rise, shatter, and fall, and now as dawn broke over the blood-stained halls, it finally turned away. Love had once bound them, but love had also destroyed them. Edric's name would be remembered as the king who lost everything. Kaelin's as the warrior who let his heart turn to steel. Seraphina's as the queen who played the game too well and lost. Yet, despite the ruin they left in their wake, their story would not be forgotten. Love, though twisted by power and betrayal, had left its mark upon Altheron. Songs would be sung of the passion that built empires and the heartbreak that crumbled them. Even in their downfall, their love remained, an echo haunting the halls long after they were gone. The kingdom of Altheron would rebuild, but not under the rule of those who had fought for its throne. The war for power had ended, leaving behind only a tale, one of love, betrayal, and ruin. The people would speak of Edric's fall, of Kaelin's wrath, of Seraphina's ambition. Some would call them fools, others would call them visionaries, but all would agree they were legends. And as the years passed and the moon once again cast its light upon Altheron, it would not weep, it would remember. For even in destruction, their story had become immortal,